How are y'all doing? It's been a long weekend, right? A little bit exhausted. It's good to sit down. So this is our family-friendly games panel, and in this panel we're going to talk about like our favorite qualities of family-friendly games, what makes a family-friendly game to us, and how we can inspire creators to make more accessible family-friendly content. So starting down the line, I'm going to introduce, or our panelists are going to introduce themselves, and they're going to start with their name, pronoun, and what's one of their favorite family-friendly games, and what aspect of it makes it family-friendly to them. Do you want to start?
Sure. So, my name is Hossein Basyouni. I go by he, him. I play a lot of family-friendly games, so I like stuff like Crash Bandicoot, Super Mario, Sonic the Hedgehog. And one of the aspects that makes this game family-friendly is how accessible and how easy to pick up it is. You know, these games, I can introduce them to my friends who never played games before, and they'll know exactly what to do.
Hi everyone, Ankita Sharma, gender pronoun she, her, hers, and my family-friendly game of choice is definitely Super Mario Kart. My sister and I would always just try to compete with each other, and she's actually a gamer, so she's really good. And I don't really get, they know her, so they know how good she is compared to me. And just any other games that we try to play against each other, it's really not as fun because I have a really hard time picking up. And Mario Kart is just one of those that I can just get on and actually beat her at times, so it's fun.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Ina Braxton. I'm the lead producer at the Digital Feature Lab, where these folks intern. And we actually produce like an array of family-friendly games. It's kind of like our impotence to produce interesting like puzzle strategy games and new like novel mechanics and take them and use them in new ways. And we are really committed to doing non-violent gaming because we feel like the market is saturated with violent games, and it's more fun to like see what we can do outside of that. I use she, her pronouns, and one of my favorite family-friendly games is Tearaway Unfolded, which came out on PS4 a couple years ago. It's a beautiful game, and yeah, very accessible and really great use of like song and story.
I'm Colin Smith. I go by he, him. I guess one of my favorite family-friendly games right now would be Overcooked on the Nintendo Switch. And the reason because of that is I grew up in the 90s. I have two younger brothers, and most of my games were couch co-op. So it was like you're sitting right next to the person and you're trying to solve some cooperative puzzle, or you're using each member to try and figure that out. So Overcooked, where it kind of separates each member of the team, and each person has a specific thing that they need to do that kind of brings the whole group together. That's kind of where I like to go with like the whole family-friendly, the whole couch co-op, playing with the person next to you to solve like a whole cooperative puzzle.
That's awesome. So you kind of touched on the kind of games you enjoy playing with your family and what makes them fun for you to play with the people next to you. But other than families, like who are other people that you bring in to play family-friendly games with together?
Who are you?
Oh, me?
Yes.
Oh. Yes, I'm Morgan, I'm the moderator. I work with all of them. They're all angels and delightful and wonderful. And I forgot to introduce myself. That's my main role here. But yes, back to my question. Other than families, who are the people you like to bring in and play family-friendly games with together, and what are some of the reasons why?
I can respond to that while other people think. So I have an interesting relationship with gaming because I played a lot of video games when I was a kid and then kind of fell off as I went into high school. It wasn't necessarily something that I was as interested in or found as accessible. I really wanted to be out and about. But then when I started getting back into it, I really like had a hard time learning, like stepping into something like a Call of Duty where I'm just like twirling in a circle trying to like climb a ladder and I can't even get up the ladder, and I'm like, this is so frustrating, you know? And so for that, like a lot of these family-friendly titles like are actually the accessible titles to people who enjoy video games but don't have that same trained dexterity, because I don't. Like I play with my 15-year-old and or like my 11-year-old nephew, and they can just mop the floor with me. However, like, I still kind of want to jump on and play. I'm never going to be able to like match them as far as like being able to operate that PS4 controller in the same way that they can, but we can have a lot of fun together. So I think one of the great parts about these, what we're calling family friendly, they're actually like really just anybody friendly. They're very accessible. And then to invite people on that have the same story as I do, where they maybe played a little bit when they were a kid, but then fell off. But like titles like that are really easy to be like, hey, do you want to come and play this? So the game that I mentioned, Tearaway, I had an amazing experience actually with my dad. That's my dad. Say hi, Dad.
Hi, Dad. My daughter. New people coming in. My daughter.
With Tearaway, where Dad had never played on a PS4 before. My nephew played mainly Xbox games, and Dad was able to sit down and actually work his way through that initial tutorial, having never played on a PS4, because the creators had made it so accessible that he could actually sit down there and read through all the instructions, and he got lost. Of course, he was just in it, like loving the story, loving all of the mechanics, the characters. You know, I had to actually wrench it away from him eventually. Something like Call of Duty and like Mass Effect and these other games, they just don't have that level of accessibility. And that like takes gaming away from a whole community of people. Dad's actually played a ton of computer games and was an early computer gamer, but didn't play any console stuff. So it was really exciting to have that moment with him being able to share that. And then later having him and all the grandkids there able to share like that gaming space together. That's just, it's amazing and exciting. But you can't do that with games that have all of that really hard uptake and are for those really, really experienced gamers. You can't have that moment.
Anyone else want to add? Yeah.
Yeah. And to add to what Aina has said, you know, I grew up in the 90s, you know, that's why I like most of the games that I do. And from what I've, you know, asked around, you know, a lot of people still, you know, miss those kinds of games, you know. When Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy was announced last year, you know, and I was talking to like people from my friends and family of all ages, you know, it was mainly people my age and older that were excited, you know. Most people didn't, you know, most people under that age didn't know what Crash was, you know, for example. So like these types of games, you know, they still have a big fan base today. So really, you know, we need to cater them too. Like I read an article recently that Super Mario Odyssey, so just being an exclusive to Nintendo Switch, sold more than Star Wars Battlefront 2 on all platforms combined. So, you know, there is a market for those types of games, you know.
Any other thoughts, Colin? Okay.
Yeah, I just want to say that yesterday I was demoing one of our, on our booth, I was demoing our games, and one of our games is called Ghostlight Manor. It's a multiplayer and single player game. So I actually, I challenged one of my other interns who was also demoing, and this kid who had been hanging out by the booth for at least an hour or so, and I was like, okay, let's go, let's play multiplayer. And this kid's not even like 10 years old, and we're in our 20s, and we were going against each other, but it was so much fun, and he was having a blast too. So for me, our game, Ghostlight Manor, is a perfect example of what a family-friendly game can be. Because, I mean, he was playing Seed and all sorts of other games, but he was able to pick up on the multiplayer functionality of Ghostlight Manor very quickly. And he was playing against us like he had been playing it for a while. You know, like his score wasn't even that far off from what our scores were. I was like, dang, is he going to catch up to me? Am I really going to lose to a 8-year-old right now? So for me, that was the best part, that I could ask any one of you, you'd be able to pick up and actually master the game. And obviously there's better players than you, so it's really not that it's really not that sad when you lose, because you're still having so much fun playing against them. It's just about the fact that I can play against whoever. It could be someone older than me, someone younger than me, someone who doesn't like gaming, someone who's really into gaming, and they're all gonna have a pretty similar experience to what I had. So I had really fun, a lot of fun playing. I won.
He did beat me though, one of the developers.
Yes.
All right, maybe starting from Colin's end over there. So we've touched on some of our games that are our favorites, but aside from your favorites, what are some successful, really successful family-friendly games that you've seen recently?
Like I said before, like Overcooked is probably this. It's just the way that it's set up, the way that you have to cooperatively work together, or else the goal is not going to be achieved. And I really think that the connection and the cooperativeness like really brings that whole family-friendly idea together, where each member can take on a different role each game. So it's not like one person's stuck doing one thing. It's just all inclusive. Another game that does a really good job at that is Mario Kart as well, where you can. On the Switch, you can, if you're an adult and you want to play and it's kind of easy for you, you're able to go into the difficulty and turn off all the aim or all the steering assist, all this like assistive. So it's still like, it can still be a challenge for you, even though it might not be a challenge for, your child. So it's like that idea that, it's still engaging for the adult and it's still interesting for the adult, but then it's also engaging for the child. And it's like this cooperative synergy, basically.
Do you have any other thoughts on some extra?
Yeah, I mean, just, we're surrounded by tabletop games, so we would be remiss not to mention them. And again, I'm going to talk about my own family because my family's here. And this is family-friendly games. So yeah, one of the ways that I did continue gaming was playing Risk and Monopoly. And the best way, those which are wildly successful, of course, which are serious things in our family, like you do not mess around with the Risk and Monopoly. And of course, we have a lot of house rules and a lot of things. It gets very serious. But one of the funnest parts was just recently having my son and the next generation of kids kind of grow up. And we were able to do, you do like pair gaming. So you pair, the younger kids with an adult, and I love doing this because Risk is way too long for me to actually play a whole game. So I'm so ready to tap out. And it was around when they were about 8, 9, 10. My son was old enough to like play that way, and then I'd get him started. And then about hour and a half in, I'd be like, see ya. But then he was able to, it was enough that I could give him this foundation of like, this is what you're supposed to do. But then I could tap out and he could take over. And then lo and behold, I don't know how many times he went through that before he was challenging Grandpa and his uncles. So, yeah, he's mad now.
I'm just not a good sportsman. I'm sorry.
So I think anytime that you have those opportunities, especially with board games, to really do that pair playing, to bring in younger kids, not just like setting them loose, but like bringing them in and like showing them and then letting them take control, is a great way to kind of like help them get into that gaming space. And it just, there's so much learning in video games, definitely, but in tabletop games, just because of the whole kinesthetic aspect and the strategy aspect that you're really getting in a game like Risk and Monopoly and a lot of these other things. Another one that we play a lot in my household is Quirkle. I don't know if you guys know that one. It's like a math-shaped domino game. It's amazing, and I love it. And my son, that was kind of how we started to notice that he was just a math whiz. Like, we didn't know that, but then this kid is over here matching all these things, just racking up Quirkles left and right. And then we're like, wow, okay, so this is how your brain works. Got it. Like, we didn't see that coming, and, that it was really, that's revelatory, right? Like, okay, gaming just showed me something new about you that we never would have seen. And then we're able to push him in his education towards that and really help him see himself that way. So a great moment that I think, tabletop games really, again, that strategy and the tactile and kinesthetic stuff that you get with tabletop. I love video games. I work in them, but that tabletop is something else. It's its own thing.
Alright, so touching on that, so we talked a lot about playing together, playing with one another and multiplayer kinds of games. What's your favorite kind of multiplayer style? There's like local, online, co-op, board game, and why is that the most successful style for you?
So for me, like I like local multiplayer because I have a sister and I played all kinds of games with her, and so to me, like it's the online multiplayer is great, and like I play on it too, but it's not the same as like playing with people sitting next to you, having fun, making fun of each other, joking around, It's just like there's no other feeling about it, no other feeling like it, and like again, like Colin talked about Overcooked. That's another game that I was very happy that I was able to get my parents to play it because they're not gamers, they've only been playing games recently. But they do like cooking and they do like food, so I was able to make them try it on that front, and we got so competitive while playing it. It was super funny, like I was like dividing the roles, like okay, you cut the meat here, you cut the, and then we move the food. And to me, like another game that was also like that was Rocket League. It's a very popular, family friendly multiplayer game, and it's just, For me, I wish there was more local multiplayer games, and luckily it's starting to happen more frequently now that we got more, successful local multiplayer game. And just.
I think Colin mentioned something about couch co-op earlier, and I definitely love those type of games where I can pull my sister up right next to me and play something like Mario Kart or just one of those Wii games. Wii tennis used to be so much fun, right? Like, I never imagined using a console and just visually seeing my emotions and my little avatar playing through those motions. It was so interesting to me. So I really do like when I have someone with me right next to me. I don't really have that much experience with online games where I'm just playing with someone that I don't know and, playing against people that I can sort of build a gaming community with outside of my regular folks that I connect with. That's something I do want to see and explore more, just because I think it's such a big industry where I can connect with people anywhere I want. So I definitely do want to give it a try. But just having someone right next to you and going at a game and seeing, okay, they're excited, so I know that they're doing well, and I gotta catch up. And it's just exciting. That's what I love.
Yeah. Tabletop.
Yeah.
Hands down. Although I do love the couch co-op games. Never Alone is a great one that me and my son have played a lot together. It's beautiful, beautiful storytelling. Again, very easy as far as like gaming accessibility. And a guilty pleasure would be Mortal Kombat, which is not family friendly at all. Or is it? I will tell you though, I used it as a great way to kind of unpack a lot of problematic stuff with him and really introduce him to things and really start critiquing like these things, and he was able to start seeing that like, hey, it's not necessarily, it's kind of weird that they make, as you beat up the women, like as they get more beat up, their clothes start coming off.
Yeah.
That's really not okay.
Yeah.
Like, and so, it's a guilty pleasure. However, it's also an opportunity to kind of, start unpacking these things in a family sense. But just because I grew up playing tabletop games in a family space and with friends, I love it.
And for me, I would say I grew up with 2 younger brothers, so my parents would not buy us a game unless we could all play it together. That was like the rule of the house. And so because of that, I grew up just loving those co-op games. I would always have friends come over after school, and that was kind of the thing. We'd pick a house, we'd go over there, and someone would bring their Xbox. We'd system link them before the Xbox Live, But I also do like online too, because all my family's back home in South Dakota. So having online, I'm still able to play games with my brothers, even though they're 22, 24, I'm 27 now, and it's like I can just call them up, hey, you want to play Don't Starve together? And that's a really awesome PC game where you're basically you're just thrown in the wilderness and you have to survive together. You basically try not to starve together, and each person's doing one thing. Like, I'll get the food if you get the wood for the campfire, you know. And it's just that whole cooperativeness is just awesome. But the whole couch co-op, the board games, like the tabletop games, there's something about having people around you when you play games and just interacting. It's so much more than just hearing a voice on the microphone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds excellent. So you guys touch on like a huge variety of games, from like Mortal Kombat to like Mario Kart. It's a very, very wide gap. But even then, using Mortal Kombat to like show critical thinking and critical learning, and then showing these very local competitive or co-op games to like nurture and foster relationships. A lot of these games you mentioned are from indie developers, however, which I find kind of interesting. And speaking to those games we talked about, what do you think that's some of your favorite tactics that they use that should be brought maybe more towards a AAA sort of industry, or just your favorite tactics in general that game developers could bring forth a little bit more? That was long-winded, I'm sorry.
I know we're all thinking. It was like the thinking pause. I think the most important thing is accessibility in the UI and controls that I would really like to see come to a lot more games. And I think when you talked about the Mario Kart example, I think that's a way in which you could make games like Call of Duty, Mass Effect, and some of these, and Halo, things like that, that have really difficult controls that are not accessible to non-expert gamers, more accessible, where you could go in, actually set it up yourself. And I think they do a little bit of that, but even when I messed with some of that, I think it was in Mass Effect, it still was really just, I don't know why, it's just hard for me. It's just too much in the physical world. So I would love to see a little bit more of that, so that some of those bigger titles could be more accessible to non-expert gamers. So.
Like you mentioned, the story, the game Never Alone has a very powerful story.
Absolutely.
It was written to celebrate a specific tribe, Native American tribe in Alaska.
Yeah, it was myths and legends from the Inuit tribe that they partnered with in doing and recreating them and telling them. And so you're going through as you're learning the story. And again, when it comes to UI, it was done so well. So everything is very gentle, and it's this kind of gentle rolling side platformer. So, you know, the two characters kind of pass off. So one character is a little bit more for the expert gamer, and then the fox character is a little bit more for the like beginning gamer. So I was always the fox. But then it was fun because there were certain times then where his expertise on stuff, he couldn't get past the puzzle. And my expertise as far as solving puzzles was what was actually needed. And so we were actually able to switch off, which was, again, that great moment of that kind of lateral mentorship. To have that with your child is awesome. And it's a great moment for them to kind of see you in a different light, you know? So yeah, that one is just absolutely beautiful. And they did such a good job as far as like cultural representation and working really respectfully with the tribe to really make sure they were keeping the narrative grounded in the myths and keeping all of the way in which they did costuming and everything. If you guys don't know it, I would say pick it up. It's on PS4 and Xbox, actually.
I believe it's also on Steam.
Yeah. Never Alone. Yeah, it came out a few years ago, and it was like won so many awards when it came out, and then like that was it. Right? It's one, like it's interesting how that happens in the gaming world. Like, we'll have these things drop, and everybody's like, "Wow, that's so beautiful and wonderful," and then it kind of disappears. But it is a really wonderful family game, like hands down one of the best that I've ever played. So yeah.
And I guess something that the industry could do better is, I keep going back to like Mario Kart and Overcooked, because I just like the way they need to make cooperative games where it doesn't matter what role you are, everyone's kind of an important character, and they can be interchangeable.
Yeah.
And I also think that games that allow expert gamers to kind of like be experts and just kind of do the thing, even though they're kind of carrying, you know, someone that may not be as experienced as them.
Yeah.
So they're still engaged and they're still active, even though there might be someone that's kind of dragging along. I think that the interchangeability with the roles is something that they could really work on, because right now it's just kind of like one person is the star of each game, you know, and there's not any help or cooperativeness going on. Yeah.
You got something?
So one of my favorite games that I'm kind of shocked that I didn't bring it up at this point is Super Smash Brothers. And one of the things that I think this game gets right is that it's very easy to pick up but hard to master. And I feel that this is a point that often gets overlooked sometimes in family-friendly games, in that not because you're making a family-friendly game doesn't mean you have to make it, you know, very shallow, you know, or very linear, you know. You can just make a game that anybody could you know, get into, you know. Like Mario Odyssey is a game that comes to my mind. If you want to play that game, you know, if you want to get to the end, it's very easy to do so. But the moment you decide you want to collect every single moon in the game, you know, you have a whole layer of gameplay here, you know. You know, this complexity is something that I feel can easily unite people who are looking for a fun game that you can casually play, but also for people who are looking for a fun game that has depth to it. And that's something that I feel could easily, you know, restore more interest in those kinds of games, kind of like Mario Odyssey did last year.
And going off of Hassan, that just reminded me like Breath of the Wild, where you like it's very easy. You just you know, you have like these different puzzles and different shrines and stuff. But if you really want to take it that 100% completion rate, it makes it just so much more advanced. So it's like you have like these different avenues that you could basically take along the game. It's kind of like the easier path, but it's also accessible to, you know, expert gamers as well if they want to really get into it. So that just made me think of that. Yeah.
Yeah, so it looks like you guys are really touching on the importance of a narrative, and a very whole and complete and multi-level narrative that people of different skill levels can access throughout the game. And since the entertainment industry isn't secular, it's not individual by different genres. We have a lot of family-friendly movies that have come out, like Coco or Moana, and a lot of them are accessible both to the parents who are bringing their children to the movies, but also to the children who get to experience and see these different narratives from different lenses and different experiences. What do you think that some game devs can learn from these different kinds of like entertainment and family-friendly movies or experiences outside of games? Another long-winded one, I'm sorry.
You're making us think. I think one thing that Moana did so many things right, like just so many things right. In fact, I can't think of bad things about it. But I would love if somebody could tell me what I should be thinking badly about it. But is it kind of again, when we're talking about complexity, they had like the little stupid huli huli chicken character, right? That was like so dumb to me and annoying, but then I know was like really interesting to like my niece, you know? And so, but then they also went way up with like the rock character, right? And Maui, and even like all the different jokes that they had, there was all these layers of like things that you were kind of seeing. So I thought that was done really well. I also really liked the way that they presented her family and her relationship with her family, because we really are used to seeing this kind of rebellious story where the main character like is like, oh, mom and dad are just like terrible and like they don't, you know, and there was a little tension. But really, like, there wasn't that breaking with the family moment. And I was really good to see that, to see a new narrative that didn't require the main character to, like, turn her back completely on her family and her loved ones, but actually, like, she was saving them. And by acting out what she needed to do, she was making sure that she could keep those relationships. And then especially the way the grandmother character came in and kind of like really pushed her out into the world. That was so beautiful and such a healthy and wonderful representation of a multi-generational family that I think is really important for us to see right now. Too many times our narratives that we've seen in the entertainment industry are like the kill the mom in the first like 20 minutes, or, you know, like it's a lot of like trauma and like family dynamics where you're just ripped apart, you know, or this like, you know, main protagonist that has to completely rebel against the family. So it was really like a breath of fresh air to see that narrative in Moana. And I think I would love to see that a little bit more, make it into some of the games narrative. This kind of whole picture of this multi-generational family kind of launching these protagonists onto their journey and being kind of the impetus for their journey, I think is really, it's really good, and it's healthy, and I think it resonates with a lot of people. I think that family story in Moana, part of Moana's popularity was because of that resonance, because we're all like, yeah, that's awesome. You know, nobody had to die for this person to like go out on their thing, you know? So, yeah.
Yeah, like to add to what Aina has said, like I think storytelling is a very important thing that could be used more in family-friendly games, because one of the games that a lot of my friends like, I haven't played it myself, but it did look fun, was Minecraft Telltales. And, you know, it makes me think, like, why can't we have more, like, storytelling family-friendly games? You know, these games, you can easily tell a complex story through a family-friendly game, like the game that Aina talked about, Never Alone, you know? And, you know, maybe it could be little things like just, you know, a change of scenery to talking about another culture. Just simply having like a fun and engaging story that makes a lot of characters that you can love and you would love to follow.
See, when I think of narrative, I always think back to Super Mario's and think of, you know, Yoshi being the little helper, and they're trying to rescue this princess. And funny thing is, when I first played the game, I didn't really know the narrative, and I used to play, you know, all those levels, and I mean, the game's super fun. However, when I used to first play it, it was just a meaningless game. It didn't really amount to anything, and when I really read through the game, like tutorials and things like that, I realized, like, oh, wow, there's a princess that needs to be saved, and that's why I'm going through all these obstacles, and it was actually a more fulfilling experience.
Okay.
Because, well, I was just like, I'm getting her. I'm gonna be there. Just wait, I'm coming. You know, and it was a lot. It was a lot more motivating to me, because I thought that I am doing something for. It's for a cause. I'm not just playing these levels to have fun. I'm trying to rescue somebody who's in danger, and they need me to beat all those dragons and all of. I'm just thinking. But for me, a narrative really adds to the game. And being a part of this game studio, I realized that all of our games just have such unique stories that make the game so much more powerful. And the fact that these stories really aren't something where you can cause trauma, or people who are gamers are going to feel uneasy and just not really be as fulfilled. When you have a family-friendly game that people of all ages, and if someone has PTSD, even they can enjoy these games by just, you know, having a fun story instead of going through something that's traumatic all over again. Games are supposed to be entertaining. Games are supposed to be fulfilling and fun, and that's what family-friendly games do to me when there is a narrative that ties it all in.
And just to add on to that, just stop making me do stuff for loot crates. Because, it's not a fulfillment thing. Loot crates are not a narrative. Just want to throw that out there.
I know the absolute struggle of trying to grind for loot crates. It's the worst, but they still get you somehow. But yeah, carrying on, despite the increase in demand for just like casual, family-friendly games and things that aren't, traumatic, and like a horrible, like deeply saddening storyline. We still see devs are kind of focusing more on this mature storyline. And we want to just a quick like internal mental note, like why, okay, not internal, but external note you want to share with everyone. What do you think are some of the driving forces that are keeping people to make these mature games instead of branching out, especially within the AAA industry?
Oh my gosh, that is such
Sorry,
I have
I'm
so
really
many
sorry.
deep thoughts on that right now. I have so many deep thoughts on that. I will caveat too, Never Alone actually is a traumatic story.
Yeah.
So I should say that. I love it, but it is that like everybody gets deaded. And then the character moves on. So it's very sad. I don't know how to make that simple in my mind, other than I really do think that we live in a culture of fear. And I think we're addicted to fear and anxiety and pain. And so I think the entertainment industry is right in capitalizing on it because we will pay for it. We will pay for punishment. We like to be afraid. That's why you have how many like SUV special victims unit, like CSI?
Yeah.
Like, and guess who's watching those? And guess who's the main victim of all those, like young single women who live alone? Guess who's watching them? Young single women who live alone. Why? I caught myself in that same loop though and had to stop. And I was like, why am I doing this? Like, why am I making myself anxious? What can I say? We like that. So I think they have hooked onto that and they know what will sell. I think, again, like as we see things like Moana and different things that are not that same PTSD, like trauma-driven story, but are still an adventure and are still like, there is danger and there is action involved without it just being like, oh my God, just so painful. I think we're going to see a shift in what's coming out,
So representation matters, right? And if I want to see Indian people in games, I would expect most Indian people developing these games, right? And that's just how it is. As long as you have folks who are asking for particular types of representation in entertaining industry, we need those particular folks actually developing that content. And we can pretty much imagine who is developing video games, right? We all know that it's mostly male figures who they just love action, they love intensity, they love blood, splatter, all of that. And I know I'm generalizing and I apologize, but more than most often, right, we see male figures attracted towards violence and all of the chaotic where you just gotta have overly sexualized figures in these video games, and that's just what they're automatically attracted towards. So even though there is a higher demand of family-friendly games, the people who are developing these games have an attraction towards the content that they're developing. So if we want to see more family-friendly games, we need to have folks with that mindset in that field. And that's what the Digital Future Lab is so good at, because we want more representation in our games. Look at us. You see what I'm saying?
Mic drop.
Actually.
Yeah, I feel that Ainan and Kita touched on a very important point, which is vote for it with your wallets. If you really like family-friendly games to be more popular, in addition to just representation, which is a very good point, you should also support the good family-friendly games that you know. Never Alone, is a game that I imagine is worth supporting. If it's a good game with a good narrative, with a good culture.
Yeah.
That being said, I imagine that one of the reasons is also that AAA companies still insist on making the same types of games is because of fear of risk.
Yep.
Because they're gonna look around and they're gonna see like oh, what sells? What AAA games out there sell and get talked about in the media? And so, just to say something positive about it, I feel that family-friendly games are starting to come out more because Mario Odyssey has been a major success. There are rumors of a new Crash Bandicoot game in development, and even like a Spyro the Dragon reboot. Sonic the Hedgehog is back, stuff like that. Yeah, so I feel it's just really, it's just really like you just support the games that you love.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You got that, Colin? No. All right. Yeah, building off of that, like, why do you feel it is important to make family-friendly games that are accessible, like, have an increasingly larger audience that it's accessible to? Gosh, so many S's. And why is that kind of development style important to you?
I think it's clear on just the stories that we're all sharing, and I'm sure people in the audience, you guys are thinking of the same stories of just the times that you've spent playing with family. And I think the more we can kind of have more content, the more we have those moments of, bonding with our family members and with our friends while playing these games, which is like kind of what we're supposed to do. Have fun together. It's great. So yeah.
For me personally, even though I love video games, and I tell everyone that, I really love video games, especially the ones that are strategy-based because they are pretty exciting to me. There are a lot of video game content that I'm not interested in because sometimes it's just not appealing to me, or sometimes it's just too challenging to catch on to, and I just give up because I don't really like doing something I'm not good at. And that's why family-friendly games are important to me, because those are the types of games that I can actually still enjoy. And I find myself picking up on those games very quickly, and like Hassan mentioned, easy to learn, hard to master. And I'm not scared of a challenge, but if I'm not even getting how to play a game, I'm not gonna stick around too long and go through all these levels still not able to play the game. I want to at least progress with some skills that I've picked up along the way, instead of just being on level 10 and still figuring out game mechanics.
Yeah.
And when there's content that, like, which game was it when you hit a person and she's undressing herself?
Oh.
Mortal
GTO?
Kombat.
Yeah.
Oh, Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat, yes.
That's not really...
What? Did I say that? Oh.
Well, like, I'm just saying that's not really the type of content I
No.
would watch or just be entertained by. For me, I'd be like, whoa, chill. Right? So for me, I would really like a game where there is some cooperation, and if there is competition, then I want to be a good competitor. I don't want to lose in my first try, type of a thing. So that's why family-friendly games really matter to me, because most of the gaming content that is available currently has pushed me away from gaming because I haven't had the opportunity to keep it up as much.
To me, like this matters to me from a personal level, and from like just interest in gaming as a whole level. From a personal level, I just think variety is a good thing. More games that will bring people together is never a bad thing. It's always something that can bring us closer. And from an industry standpoint, and this is something that movies have been doing a lot recently too, is like we need to discuss demographics and how we expand the industry as a whole. We need more more women to be to have fun while playing our games, and more demographics to play our games, because that's how you expand the industry. That's how you expand and get more people to be interested in gaming. And the Nintendo Switch is doing very well right now. I read an article recently that was like the Nintendo, like 90% of the people of the install base of Nintendo Switch is just families who want this for their kids. So there is a market for those too. And as the more the gaming industry expands in ways that makes us more inclusive, that's really better for everyone, and that's also really healthy for like having a good gaming IPs in the future that can cater to everyone, so that we can all like have fun playing the same games together.
Okay, excellent. here's just a little side question. If you had a single tip or trick to give like a general, just the game developers of the world to make their games just a little bit more accessible, what would you tell them?
I would say make the content more visually and make the entire gaming experience more accessible. So if I don't really want to hear someone who's getting splattered on by a car running them over, then maybe I can have a feature that turns off violent audio or visual aids, right? If I don't really like blood, I personally don't mind, but I know that some people really don't like watching videos where there's a lot of blood or just disturbing content. Maybe have a feature that turns that down a little bit. So developers can still have their fun and make it so everyone who's playing it also has fun. Features like that.
Yeah. I would say this is just another shout out to representation mattering, because when you and then this is like kind of what a lot of the problems that they're having with VR right now. A lot of the user testing that they did with VR was with mainly like 20-something able-bodied like guys. And so they built all of the user interfaces and all of the stuff to kind of fit an able-bodied person who was around the height of like 6 foot, had a certain build. And so then when they took it out of that genre, out of that demographic and actually did user testing, of course, what did they find? People were like, this is terrible, you know? So, you know, jump out of your comfort box. I think that's my biggest, and I say this all the time with user testing or just who you're having work in your studio. If you can't hire people that represent different backgrounds and body shapes and understanding of gaming, then at least go out and do focus testing and rigorous user testing for accessibility on these things, because you can solve a lot of issues really easily. Like the Kinect is a perfect example that went so bad for that same exact reason. But it's surprising that they made the same mistake with VR. Learn from your mistakes. Like user test on a wider variety of people so that you can solve all these issues, so you can make something that's like a lot more accessible to a wider audience.
Yeah.
I'm gonna steal Hassam's saying and say, you know, the easy to pick up, difficult to master thing, I think is, and then just multiple levels of complexity where someone who's first coming into the game for the very first time, they're able to pick it up and have fun with the same person who plays 10 hours of video games a day and is an expert. It's just that level playing field, I think, and just the accessibility of that and just the multi-level complexity. It's kind of like, you know, if you watch a kid's movie with your kids, you get jokes that maybe go right over their head. And it's kind of the same thing with video games, where you might know this mechanic that's kind of more complex, or it's a pattern that you may have to play a lot to understand it, but someone that's first picking up the game can kind of just understand the basics of it, but are still able to compete at the same level as that advanced player. Yeah.
And to add to what Colin has been saying, if you're going to add multiple difficulties to your game, don't guilt trip the people who are playing the game by making them feel bad for choosing a lower difficulty. Because I'm not going to mention any names, but there are games that, like, the moment you choose an easy difficulty, they make you feel so bad about yourself, whether it's like with an achievement, whether it's like something,
That's terrible.
Yeah. You know, we all play games, you know, we all want to have fun. It's really like, you know, I love competitive games myself, but I also, you know, love to have people of all of my friends from all gaming levels to have fun, you know, because at the end of the day, that's all that matters. You know, we all want to play game. We all want to expand that industry further.
All right. And then one last question, and then we'll go to any audience questions. As the studio you're a part of, your big focus is family-friendly games. What steps do you take to ensure that your games are as accessible as possible?
We do a lot of rigorous user testing, and we bring in people, we bring in kids, we bring in college students, we play our games with a lot of different people, so that we know that we have, like, either we have made something that is just for us, and then we have to like correct it because it's only made for the people that are in the room. And we bring our games out to conventions like this because you learn so much the moment your game is live on a floor and you have anybody walking up and playing it. You immediately learn like 30, 40 new things about what you did wrong. And it's great. It's amazing. And I love all of that, like understanding what we need to do better. We also fill our studio with diverse groups of people intentionally, and we like push those people to bring in their whole identities, to really influence the design, the mechanics, everything about it, so that that game is more, whatever product we're working on, just becomes more better and more representational of what the people who made it are. So.
Also, all of our games currently are very accessible. They all use very few buttons. They all they have complexity with them. You know, Ghostlight, you know, it can be very competitive in multiplayer.
Absolutely.
But they're very easy to pick up, you know, like the moment you read the tutorial levels, like the first few levels, you pretty much know where to go from there.
Yeah.
And like we had people like yesterday when we were demoing, like, oh, by the way, our games are like at the table right there.
Check it out later.
Yeah, if you want to check it out. Like we would have people come to the demo and be like, yeah, I get it. You don't need to explain it to me. And to me, like that's like a good sign, because that means like a game that's very easy to understand, you know.
Yeah, well-written tutorials.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're also very actively staying up to date with the issues that are going on in the gaming industry. So every Friday we have diversity discourse discussions, and more often than anything we're talking about social representation in the gaming industry and how that affects gamers all across the world, and how we can learn from just people's successes and not so much successes and failures, and sort of incorporate those lessons into our own studio as well. And I mean, that just opens up an entire door of discussions that we can have for weeks to come. It just comes down to keeping a safe space for those dialogues and being able to talk about what we think should be the norm in the gaming industry and how we can transform.
All good?
Yeah.
So now I think we have about like 10 minutes left. We end at 3:45. If anyone has any questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a 9-year-old son that is really into cooperative games, but has a hard time with competitive games, especially if he's losing, you know.
Yeah.
It can lead to a lot of frustration and anger.
Yeah.
I wonder if you guys have any advice on getting children into more like competitive games, because I'd like him to get into that at some point in the future without being angry at other people.
Yeah, I remember my son was obsessed with one of the Hulk video games, and he wanted it so bad, but it was actually just beyond his developmental ability, and that was like just tears and tantrums, and so I actually had to shelve it for him, and then bring it back. I feel like the Lego one, it's not as competitive though, are the Legos? They're not. They're so good though. I'm surprised we didn't mention that. Like, we should have mentioned that. We should have just started out with that. Anything Lego in the video game world is amazing. Yeah, I would say don't be afraid to kind of like pull back from that and say maybe we'll wait a little bit. Like, developmental stuff is like, it's real, right? That they're really not ready sometimes to handle certain things. I feel like Mario Kart is a great one that is competitive and does allow you to kind of like set certain guidelines a little bit, right? Yeah. So. And
I would say like it's not just competitive where it's like score or like who's killing who the most or something. There's a lot of competitive games that involve strategy and puzzles, and that are like more point-based of like just ability. So I feel like maybe if you introduce some more like competitive games that weren't pitting you against another person or just pure score-based, and was more just like an intellectual type of competition. And then maybe if you you played with them as well and kind of, you know, you kind of give them that buffer zone of competitiveness, but it's like a friendly competitive. And I think online games are so hard for younger kids because I mean, I play competitive games, and multiple times I'll be playing with a team of like 20, 30-year-old guys, and then all of a sudden now we have a 9-year-old on the team, and it's not a big deal, but there are those people out there that make it a lot worse for them just because they're younger. And I mean, they have the ability to mute and stuff like that, but I really think for that competitive, you're able to like yell at, you know, and it just makes it such a hostile environment that the only reaction is kind of anger because they're, you know, it's like they're making it worse by kind of, you know, making you just talking to them, you know, and just like kind of the whole idea of like beating someone or, you know, killing the other person also is just like, it's horrible, you know, it's like it really makes you upset because it's like that person killed me, so.
Yeah, I guess it just.
What's that? We're all
Alright.
alive. We're all alive.
So I guess it's really like just, you know, co-op. You know, co-op. Luckily, we live in an era that, you know, there's a lot more co-op games to play where you can just like experience a story together, experience a game together. One game that I personally think it has been like really good for my family is Overcooked, and that's a, you know, that game can get competitive, but you're playing with people you know, your local co-op, you know, it's available on every platform, so whatever platform you want to buy it for, you know, it's great. You know, so co-op games I feel is my advice probably.
And you might want to try tabletop games.
Yeah.
That's a really safe way to do competition because again, you're controlling the whole thing, right? And yeah, because what I noticed with my son, he's 15, he still plays games, and just recently did he start playing a game called Fortnite, which is the first time that he's actually played online, like since when he was a kid. And he did not like the whole experience of being in the online space. And so he would never play online until just now. He's 15, and I think it's just now he's like, okay, I think I can be safe. Like, I think I'm safe now, you know? And so he'll play Fortnite, but that's the first time, and he's played games forever. He would play, like, he would hook up with, like, his cousin occasionally, but he would never go into the online space at all. Because of, like, he had done it, and then he had had a bad experience getting bullied, and was like, not worth it. So, yeah.
One of the hardest parts, I think, is with tabletop games, you can bend the rules. You can play with the cards open, you can walk people through it, you can rule out certain rules that hurt people in certain ways, which really help in making it easier for younger people to be part of the group. And you can tweak some of the rules in some of the game, but it's not like you can the bowling ball. You can just have the side of the bowling alley just go flat, and then the ball will bounce.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think for a lot of family-friendly games, stuff like that would really help. And for me, I'm the other way around. I gamed a lot on PC. I can do just about anything on the keyboard, but once you give me an Xbox controller, and the thing I found is that some games have practice levels.
Yep.
Yeah.
But also practice levels where if you do trip off the side of the whatever, it doesn't mean that you have to play 45 minutes to get back up again.
Yep.
It's kind of the same thing with safeties on, and a lot of those kind of features towards game where not just the ability to turn them on, but just punishing somebody for falling off the cliff in just the wrong positions, like the old Sierra games.
Yep.
Oh, jeez.
You fell off the edge, you said you're dead, game over.
Yeah.
The LucasArts game, and then you fell off the cliff, and then you fell on a cloud, it went back up, it dropped you back on the cliff and said, don't do that again. These kind of very simple things that could make things so much easier to, but not just for the little ones.
For everybody.
I want to have practice grounds because, God.
I know. I know.
The whole falling off the cliff thing makes me think of like Mario Kart, where you fall off, like you drive off the track, you know, on Rainbow Road, because it's going to happen.
Put you back on.
Yeah, and it's just, they just fish you out and just put you back there.
Yep.
I mean, you lose a little bit of time, but it's not like a punishment, you know.
Yeah.
It's almost fun too, because it's, you know, you're like ramming people off the track and stuff.
Yeah, Tearaway does that really well. It's the same thing when you fall, when you don't ever die, you just get put back into a letter and then mailed back. And it's so cute and it's so pretty, and you actually don't mind it.
But it's really, if you're talking about the Mario Kart, like snaking is something that's kind of an acquired practice.
Yeah.
But there's only tutorials out there where you can see how it happens. There's never a level where it helps you and says, let go now, or where the controller actually starts to vibrate when you're doing something stupid. So a lot of those kind of let me learn how to do this
Yeah.
kind of stuff,
Yeah.
instead of by just endlessly fidgeting. I don't have time for endless fidgeting.
Yeah. Yeah, I can tell you as a developer, tutorials are the things that you agonize over.
Yeah.
And I think, let's just be real, this is an expert community. It's a community that loves to be experts in their own thing.
Yeah.
We love to have all these obscure things that we talk about and do. And I think that's where this gets, we suffer sometimes, where we don't make things as approachable as we should, because we like being the keepers of the knowledge.
But I want to become one of those experts.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying is we shouldn't do that, right? And so we have rewritten the tutorials for all 3 of our games nonstop, and we will continue to rewrite them. And I really think developers need to spend more time on that, and more time even offering just more tutorial moments like you're talking about, because I think it really pushes that approachability. So.
And Hassam can talk on this. In Rocket League, they have practice, like a whole practice arena where if you want to practice goalie or if you want to practice this or a specific skill, they have these practice rounds you can go through, and it goes from easy to medium to hard. And I'm not gonna lie, even the expert ones for me, and I play Rocket League, I have 300 hours in Rocket League, and I still can't even do some of the expert ones, And it's just that ability to kind of take a step back and say, I like this game, but I really want to work on this skill because I think this is going to help me have even more fun. And I think that's really important too, is kind of have a hyperbolic time chamber, if you so to say, of just take a pause and pull yourself out of the game and just practice on something. Yeah.
This has been kind of picking my brain, and I've read a couple articles, and I feel like this would be a perfect question for you guys. In society, we've been having a lot of gun violence and online bullying and a lot of overstimulation to our youth, a generation that's growing up with technology right in front of their faces every day. You guys are kind of the key to basically tone that down and redirect them in an opportunity to not be overstimulated. What kind of experiences and opportunities do you guys think that you have to basically raise this generation without the sense of fear, terror, or even feeling like they're in a safe opportunity or place in this world where they can feel comfortable? What type of opportunities do you guys feel like being a family-friendly game would incorporate to what you can do for society?
Yeah. I think that's what is fun about these games, when they are silly and they don't involve that trauma, and it's a safe space to kind of get away from that. I think it's really important. This is actually, as a parent of a teenager, this is actually a place where I really struggle as being a person who creates and works in the digital world. I also struggle with this idea of man, we were at an engagement party last night and my son was just the whole time, and I actually had to tell him multiple times, put your phone away, you're in real life, engage with reality, so there is, I do feel this sense of fear around what is going to happen with that, because this person wants to spend more time existing on this than he does with this, I don't have answers for that. I think this is something that is emerging right now. And as a creator, it worries me, but at the same time, I love what I do and I love the possibilities.
Do you sense optimism with what might happen with the industry of gaming?
I hope so.
I sense it. That's why I kind of wanted to refer back to the questions.
Yeah.
I feel like your guys' mindset in
Yeah.
family-friendly games is the ultimate mind of we're having a generation of children that are basically raised with media and all these devices in front of their face. But the time that they have with you playing a game with them, it's an enjoyable experience so that they can basically have more enjoyable experiences. Be it's not necessarily the overstimulation of social media. It's I can actually bond with my kid without having them feeling like they're watching YouTube or that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think that what you guys are doing with your operation is basically reaching that goal. So
Yeah.
that's awesome.
And I think there's a lot of other creators out there that are trying to create content like this that is an answer to like the GTOs of the world.
Yeah, it's
right.
just bringing out the balance.
Yeah, and I think it's really important, and I really do hope that like that is where the trend goes, because I think like this stuff is so amazing and it's great that we can do all these different things, but like, do we really just need to like make murder simulations? No. You know, is it like, and I feel like I'm not the only one within the industry that's asking themselves like, why do we create?
Yeah.
You know, but people really do in this industry need to ask themselves that now, like
really,
more than ever.
I see you talked about the like movies like Moana. I see the shift of society starting to change where it's like you don't have to have tragedy in a video game. You don't have to have tragedy in each one, but having a learning experience too. So I agree with what you're saying on this before. So.
Yeah.
And I really think too is you got to think too, like a lot of people that are having kids now grew up in the 80s and the 90s when video games and cooperative games were like first coming out. So they have their kids that are growing up and they want to play games with them, but it might be necessarily too violent or not accessible for the parent or too hard for the kid, you know?
Yeah.
So I really feel like, you know, it's like a generational shift right now that like families are growing up where the whole family are gamers and have been gamers since they were kids, you know? And so I think it's really important that if the industry is going to become more accessible, they need to realize that it's not just 20, 30-year-old males playing violent video games. It's like, and now I have a 30-year-old male who also has a son, a daughter, you know, that also wants to play with them. So it's, in order, I really feel like the shift is going to happen because in order to make more money per se, you need to be more accessible to everyone. And if you're not accessible to those parents, then you're not going to be able to reach those kids.
Right.
Yeah, and if the developers have to, you know, make those games, which I'm sure they will do for like the near future at least, you can at least still make, you know, other games on the side. You know, if you look at the portfolio of the games from your company and you're seeing like one genre, you know, maybe it's time to experiment with something new. That never hurts, you know. Maybe you'll get yourself another fan base.
Yeah. Somebody was saying to me the other day that part of the reason why in VR right now there's so many zombie games, because that's literally like everybody who did VR made a zombie game like right away, was actually because what they wanted to do was focus on just learning how to make on those tools. And they knew, okay, we know exactly how to make a zombie game. And it actually wasn't about them actually personally wanting to make zombie games, but that they were like, okay, this is really new, like hardware, really new software. It has a lot of bugs. It's really difficult to handle. What's something that our team can just like execute on well? We don't have to worry about the content. And so that's why I think we got like saturated with zombie games. And I think, you know, hopefully we'll start to see a shift in that world too, with like different experiences, because that has the potential to be an amazing tool for empathy if used correctly. But,
well, it just makes me think about the fact that most people are so desensitized, right, to violence and just all of this hate against one another, instead of really cooperating and feeling for one another and having that empathy for each other. We think it's okay to, you know, have someone you hate and then maybe, just like a video game, shoot them down. And you're seeing that in reality. You're seeing that in the news constantly. And everyone's just okay with it because it's what's happening. It's the norm. And you can't really... the way someone would have felt if you found out someone in your city had passed away because of a school shooting, it's not the same anymore. Now it's like, oh, that sucks. Wow. And then you move on a day later because you're constantly surrounded by these images of death and violence and gun violence, like you mentioned. And it's a tragedy to think that we don't even get fazed by such violent images anymore. It's because part of it is entertaining. All of that chaos has become an entertaining factor for most. And now people don't really have that part of empathizing with people's pain anymore. It's just entertainment. It's just another news story that's out there, right?
We're way past time.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we just walked in and said we had 5 minutes left. So I'm a
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
And like, I like it. We started out with a big group and then it just.
Thanks for your questions.
Yeah, and thanks for sticking with us. Yeah.